They handed me the papers at 9:12 a.m. By noon, my son's message finished the job. Don't contact me. I need time. In a single day, I lost the $4.2 million home I built, the keys to my daughter's routine, and the name I'd spent 30 years making bulletproof, buried under forged statements and a face that wasn't mine. In a casino I'd never entered, I thought betrayal was a choice. Turns out it can be engineered. It wasn't until I opened the small safe in my late mother's basement, cash banded tight, recordings labeled Hail, calls, and a folder stamped Miles Fellowship, that the truth cut clean. My own son had been steered into helping take me down. This isn't a story about revenge, it's about evidence, consequence, and how a father decides what to save when everything else is already burning. Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're watching from. And as you watch, don't just sit back, be part of the experience. If a moment grabs your attention, whether it's powerful, unexpected, or deeply moving, drop a comment with the timestamp of that scene and share your thoughts. Your reactions bring the story to life, and we love seeing which moments resonate with you the most. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now grab a coffee or tea, settle in, and let's begin. I wake before the fairy horns do, when the sound is still a sheet of pewter and the houses along Queen Anne hold their breath. Habit has a way of setting the stage before memory arrives. Grinder whirring, kettle sighing, the slow release of coffee into a mug I've carried from job site to job site for 15 years. From the deck, our glass railing frames the morning like a level line. Cranes at the port blink awake. A tug noses a barge past Magnolia. The house, cedar, steel, a skin of glass, sits into the hill as if it grew here. The last appraisal placed it at $4.2 million, but the number means less to me than the ledger of decisions it represents. Maintenance done on time, mortgages refinanced on better terms, patience held longer than the market said I should. I take a jog up to Cary Park, 2 miles out and back, air smelling of wet fur and metal. My knees sing a thin note that I pretend is consent. Runners in bright windbreakers parse the slope. A husky steams in the cold and leans its weight into the leash like a trawler taking weather. I keep an accountant's pace and let the city unspool. Towers in muted glass, a smear of drizzle over Elliott Bay, a ferry cutting a white suture in the gray. When I get home, I pass the thermostat, check the deadbolt, scan the inbox headings on my phone. A life of lists, little ones nested inside larger ones, has kept me on my feet longer than strength ever did. Work meets me at the dining table. A warehouse claim in Kent, fire suppression lines burst in a freeze, wick moisture into insulation, sag a run of T-bar ceiling. On site yesterday, I'd pressed a pin moisture meter into studs and felt the truth announce itself in numbers. This morning, I write in the margins of photographs, annotate hairline versus structural, sort loss from deferred maintenance, weigh replacement cost against functional obsolescence. Numbers don't love you back, but they don't lie if you measure the right thing the right way. That's as close to faith as I get. June's cello warms the hall with scales that rise like steam. I carry her case to the car and set it down as if I'm placing a fragile argument on a crowded table. The rosin dust frets the black interior like frost. Easy on the rosin, I tell her, and she rolls her eyes the way 16 does, a smile barely hidden behind the motion. She stands straighter than most adults, already careful with the ways her hands make sound in the world. I taught her to check tire pressure, to keep a blanket in the trunk and a flashlight in the glove box. She tolerated those lessons the way children tolerate weather, mildly annoyed, faintly reassured. Miles drifts through the kitchen with a laptop under his arm, hoodie up, hair doing its own weather. "Morning, Dad," he says without looking, the greeting like a receipt, proof of transaction. He's 23 and bright in that new minted way, interning at a downtown fintech where sprint plans, dashboards, and Jira tickets claim their hours. I bring him coffee the color of wet walnut. "Thanks," he says, fingers already on trackpad. When he talks about data pipelines or cohort analysis, a light comes on behind his eyes. A blueprint becoming a building only he can see. I recognize the thrill. It's the same click I felt the first time a claim settled exactly where the facts said it should. Mara texts from the east side. 3 showings today, a Mercer Island Tudor, 2 contemporary boxes with names longer than their setbacks. We've been separated for a year, the kind that stays civil because you conduct it like a business you both still care about. The co-parenting calendar hangs on the fridge under a magnet shaped like a lighthouse. Text me the pickup time, she writes. I send it back with the precision of a survey stake. We talk better now that we talk less. Somewhere between our last escrow and the first quiet Thursday, we stopped needing each other's edits and started trusting each other's margins. On my keyring, there's a small brass diamond stamped with a hardware store's name in Burlington, Vermont. It opens the front door of my mother's brick house at the corner where maples crowd the sidewalk and the snowplow scrapes the curb down to sparks in January. Evelyn has been gone 3 years, but her habits survived like perennials. Bills filed by month in a banker's box with neat pencil tabs, grocery lists in a steady hand, a note on a scrap of stationery that says, "Roof, ask Bill about flashing, no rush." I have not asked Bill. I have not flown back to sort the boxes. It's easy to call it scheduling. It's harder to call it what it is. What I keep of her sits as much in my hands as in the house. She taught me that prevention beats repair, that you don't patch rot with fresh paint, that most trouble arrives in envelopes you didn't open in time. We built a ritual out of receipts. She'd flatten them with her palm. I'd read the totals aloud. We'd staple and file. I did not love the ritual then. I love it now because it's mine. I have a box that matches hers month by month and a pen that writes the same way on thermal paper. A life can be a stack of proofs if you let it. Seattle has its own proofs. The neighbor across the street flies a Sounders flag the size of a sail. A boy on a scooter rattles past wearing a raincoat printed with tiny constellations. The deck beads with drizzle that smells faintly of salt and cedar. A gull lands on the parapet and regards the living room like a generous error. Inside, the furnace gives its small metal cough. I set the dash cam on the hall table where I'll remember to move it to the car for the weekend. June still needs to practice parallel parking, and I prefer a record. If I've learned anything, it's that memory without evidence is a houseplant in a dark room. By 9, the ordinary has set like concrete. June claims the back seat, Miles claims the far end of the couch, Mara claims the road. I claim everything that falls between, filters, forms, folded laundry, the thin line where routine becomes reassurance. The house glows the way houses do when they believe in their occupants. I've spent a career reading fractures, learning which ones matter and which ones are only cosmetic. I'd like to say that skill extends to living. Most mornings I let myself believe it, and then on rare mornings like this one, I feel the smallest air shift along an interior seam you can't see, the kind that will never make a report until it's already a crack. The porch light wavered when I came up the steps, a hiccup in a brand new bulb. Rain stitched the air sideways off the sound and made the cedar smell clean enough to pass for truth. I thumbed the smart lock and felt the deadbolt motor hum. On the app, a notification waited, an admin check at 2:17 a.m. tagged to my profile. I don't run checks at 2:17 a.m. I don't run anything then except breath. I filed the anomaly in the same drawer where I keep loose screws. Notice, don't panic, tighten later. The kitchen kept its after-school disorder. June's music binder splayed on the island, a plate with a neat semicircle of apple skins, Miles's laptop asleep and breathing. He breezed in with his hood up, made of errands and velocity, muttered a greeting, and reached for the fridge. On the family inbox I still pay for, a password reset email flagged itself. iCloud time-stamped just after midnight. Another alert said, "Find my sharing had been disabled temporarily." The two-factor page showed a fresh number, mostly asterisks, ending in digits that weren't mine. I didn't ask him about any of it. I wrote the details in my pocket notebook because distance is a tool like any other, and asking the wrong way is an invitation to lie. After dinner, I drove June to rehearsal. On the way home, she went quiet, the kind of quiet that edits the road. In the driveway, she stayed in the passenger seat with the cello across her knees like a shield. Her eyes were red as a rubbed rash. She told me she and her brother had argued. She would not say about what. "He's not himself lately," she whispered, then wiped her face as if erasing a chalk mark and hustled inside. I let that boundary hold. The hardest part of parenting a teenager is pretending you believe the door will tell you the truth. Mara texts from the east side. 3 showings today, a Mercer Island Tudor, 2 contemporary boxes with names longer than their setbacks. We've been separated for a year, the kind that stays civil because you conduct it like a business you both still care about. The co-parenting calendar hangs on the fridge under a magnet shaped like a lighthouse. "Text me the pickup time," she writes. I send it back with the precision of a survey stake. We talk better now that we talk less. Somewhere between our last escrow and the first quiet Thursday, we stopped needing each other's edits and started trusting each other's margins. On my keyring, there's a small brass diamond stamped with a hardware store's name in Burlington, Vermont. It opens the front door of my mother's brick house at the corner where maples crowd the sidewalk and the snowplow scrapes the curb down to sparks in January. Evelyn has been gone 3 years, but her habits survived like perennials. Bills filed by month in a banker's box with neat pencil tabs, grocery lists in a steady hand, a note on a scrap of stationery that says, "Roof, ask Bill about flashing, no rush." I have not asked Bill. I have not flown back to sort the boxes. It's easy to call it scheduling. It's harder to call it what it is. What I keep of her sits as much in my hands as in the house. She taught me that prevention beats repair, that you don't patch rot with fresh paint, that most trouble arrives in envelopes you didn't open in time. We built a ritual out of receipts. She'd flatten them with her palm. I'd read the totals aloud. We'd staple and file. I did not love the ritual then. I love it now because it's mine. I have a box that matches hers month by month and a pen that writes the same way on thermal paper. A life can be a stack of proofs if you let it. Seattle has its own proofs. The neighbor across the street flies a Sounders flag the size of a sail. A boy on a scooter rattles past wearing a raincoat printed with tiny constellations. The deck beads with drizzle that smells faintly of salt and cedar. A gull lands on the parapet and regards the living room like a generous error. Inside, the furnace gives its small metal cough. I set the dash cam on the hall table where I'll remember to move it to the car for the weekend. June still needs to practice parallel parking, and I prefer a record. If I've learned anything, it's that memory without evidence is a houseplant in a dark room. By 9, the ordinary has set like concrete. June claims the back seat, Miles claims the far end of the couch, Mara claims the road. I claim everything that falls between, filters, forms, folded laundry, the thin line where routine becomes reassurance. The house glows the way houses do when they believe in their occupants. I've spent a career reading fractures, learning which ones matter and which ones are only cosmetic. I'd like to say that skill extends to living. Most mornings I let myself believe it, and then on rare mornings like this one, I feel the smallest air shift along an interior seam you can't see, the kind that will never make a report until it's already a crack. The porch light wavered when I came up the steps, a hiccup in a brand new bulb. Rain stitched the air sideways off the sound and made the cedar smell clean enough to pass for truth. I thumbed the smart lock and felt the deadbolt motor hum. On the app, a notification waited, an admin check at 2:17 a.m. tagged to my profile. I don't run checks at 2:17 a.m. I don't run anything then except breath. I filed the anomaly in the same drawer where I keep loose screws. Notice, don't panic, tighten later. The kitchen kept its after-school disorder. June's music binder splayed on the island, a plate with a neat semicircle of apple skins, Miles's laptop asleep and breathing. He breezed in with his hood up, made of errands and velocity, muttered a greeting, and reached for the fridge. On the family inbox I still pay for, a password reset email flagged itself. iCloud time-stamped just after midnight. Another alert said, Find My Sharing had been disabled temporarily. The two-factor page showed a fresh number, mostly asterisks, ending in digits that weren't mine. I didn't ask him about any of it. I wrote the details in my pocket notebook because distance is a tool like any other, and asking the wrong way is an invitation to lie. After dinner, I drove June to rehearsal. On the way home, she went quiet, the kind of quiet that edits the road. In the driveway, she stayed in the passenger seat with the cello across her knees like a shield. Her eyes were red as a rubbed rash. She told me she and her brother had argued. She would not say about what. "He's not himself lately," she whispered, then wiped her face as if erasing a chalk mark and hustled inside. I let that boundary hold. The hardest part of parenting a teenager is pretending you believe the door will tell you the truth. Family court looks like a municipal waiting room that forgot how to be kind. Fluorescents flatten the morning, the carpet is the color of rainwater that never dries. I sit with a manila folder on my knees and listen to the bailiff call surnames like inventory. When our case is read, we rise. The judge is efficient and unreadable, a metronome behind half-moon glasses. My pulse keeps time with the wall clock. I have arranged my exhibits the way I arrange photographs at a lost site, numbered, labeled, ready to behave. Mara's attorney goes first. Her voice has the warmth of a well-tuned instrument applied to a song about famine. She paints me as a man in thrall to sports betting, concealing crypto losses, destabilizing the household environment. She slides bank statements into the record, anchors them with stills of a man in a casino under two clean lights wearing my face. An affidavit from a concerned acquaintance alleges erratic moods. The words are neat and frictionless, and that is what makes them dangerous. The judge nods, not agreeing, not disagreeing, merely receiving. When it's my turn, I speak the way I file. Slowly, exactly, without flourish. I point to font drift, to the posting dates off by one, to compression haze along the totals line, consistent with template tampering. I explain that a dashcam timestamp from a parallel parking lesson with June overlaps a time I am said to be at Snoqualmie. I request a continuance to allow independent forensic analysis and raw CSVS from the bank and platforms. I do not accuse, not yet. I ask for time, for logs, for the dignity of facts. The judge listens as if she has heard this song before and knows how it usually ends. "Status quo for the child," she says, voice even. "Temporary orders to minimize disruption until verification." The gavel is a small sound, but it changes the air. Mara is granted exclusive possession of the Queen Anne home. June will reside primarily with her mother. I am given a structured schedule that feels like visiting hours in a museum where the exhibits can miss you back. I am to vacate the residence within 72 hours. I am admonished not to alter financial accounts outside ordinary expenses. There is no finding of guilt, only precaution set to paperwork. Precaution is heavy when it sits on one side of a scale by itself. In the hallway, my phone buzzes with a call from HR and then IT conference style, voices that could be anyone's. They confirm my credentials remain on hold pending inquiry into anomalous access activity around 2:17 a.m. They assure me it is procedural, that they need to protect everyone. I ask for written notices and incident numbers. "Of course," a voice says. Another adds, "We value your cooperation." I take notes on the back of my docket and print each name in careful block letters. If I am going to fall, I will measure the angle. I drive back to the Hill as a visitor to my own address. The house stands there, neutral as sculpture, a proof of a life that suddenly requires a chain of custody. I fetch boxes from the garage and begin a quiet inventory of what leaves with me. Tools, the receipts box, the dash cam, 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, work boots that have known claims and scaffolds, and the way warehouse dust gets into your hairline. On June's music stand, rosin dust turns the black to frost. Along the stair rail, a dent from the summer miles thought he could ollie the landing. The appraisal folder sits in a kitchen drawer like a souvenir from a museum exhibit where you once belonged. I keep my voice neutral when I leave Mara a voicemail about logistics, the key, the garage opener, The forwarding address for legal service. Neutral as armor when anger would be a weapon that belongs to someone else. My phone chimes with a text from Miles. Don't contact me. I need time. The sentence is smaller than the ache it sets loose. I screenshot it, title the image Communications, Immediate Family Miles, and save it to a folder I never thought I'd need. A man can be reverent about paperwork when it's the only ritual left that behaves. The practical calculus arrives as a clean sheet. To hire the people who can prove what I already know, I need cash not tangled with accounts that can be frozen. Evelyn's house in Burlington is an asset that sits outside Seattle's weather. I slide the brass Vermont key off my ring and into my palm. It is small, cool, and absolute. I book a motel 2 hours east. I set the dash cam to continuous. I print a destination checklist in the last 30 minutes before the house stops being mine for now. Utilities, realtor shortlist, locksmith, safe deposit box. I leave after dark to keep the leaving from making a spectacle of itself. I-90 climbs out of the city. Wet black ribbon pulled through passes that remember older storms. The wipers click a steady promise. A thermos breathes coffee into the cabin. Snow still caps the distant shoulders. In the passenger seat, the manila folder rides buckled in. Forward motion is a narcotic. When staying still feels like a dare. The clock on the dash holds 9:40 with the kind of authority only a machine can believe in. East of Ellensburg, I stop at a rest area cut into the slope. The air smells like dust and rain, deciding who gets custody. My phone lights with a notification from an app I rarely open. A Reddit thread has started to trend. The headline is a smear packaged as public service. Seattle dad blows savings on bets insurance scam. The photo is my house. The number on the facade is clear enough for a delivery driver. The poster's handle is throwaway_M23. Comments have cleared 2,000. I see a username I recognize from a cohort study Miles once showed me. I do what I always do. Screenshot, copy the URL, note the timestamp, create a new folder named Smear Public and drop it there. A sharp cold moves across my chest like a front. The narrative is sprinting ahead of the court, and I am jogging behind with a clipboard. Back on the highway, the rain loosens into bands. I play the cassette of Evelyn reading Wendell Berry, her voice soft as if it had all the time in the world. I keep my hands at 10 and 2 and let the road unroll under the car like film. Label, sleeve, stack, breathe, I say to the windshield, and the glass receives the words without judgment. Vermont waits on the far side of the continent with a key and a house and the chance to buy the expertise that will make the record true again. I don't pray, but I do promise. The thermos lid clicks shut like agreement, and I drive. The brass key finds the lock like muscle memory I didn't know I kept. Evelyn's brick house exhales cold and laundry soap when the door gives. The wall clock ticks a beat older than my patience. On the dining table, I lay out a work zone. Laptop, portable scanner, a legal pad titled, in block print, Vermont Action Plan, D0. Radiators clank awake after I bleed them. I relight the water heater's pilot, swap a porch bulb, oil 2 hinges, and write replace cellar hasp after the chain on the basement door rattles in my hand. By noon, I've turned the table into a case file. I wire a retainer to a digital signature expert in Boston from a clean account, then twin everything, PDFs of bank statements, casino stills, my incident notes about font drift and posting date offsets. Each item into a tamper seal envelope, each envelope logged with time, date, initials, the small liturgy of chain of custody. I draft a declaration of anomalies. Compression artifacts on totals lines, inconsistent watermark density, the $0 authorization ping captured at 2:17 a.m., the IT warning that boxed my credentials. Seattle Council gets a packet too. A preservation demand for raw CSVS, login IPS, device IDS, and any two-factor changes bracketing that same minute. I ask for litigation hold letters to the bank and platforms and copy and company IT because parallel timelines protect the spine of a story. The printer whirs steady as if paper can will facts into coherence. Outside, maple shade dapples the walk. Inside, the house smells like Evelyn's brand of tidy refusal to let chaos think it lives here rent-free. Money is a plan before its numbers. I open a folder marked Cash Plan, Evelyn House and draw boxes, experts, counsel, security, temporary housing, contingency. 2 Burlington realtors pick up on the first ring. I ask for as-is versus light reno valuations, comps, days on market, roof sensitivity. One of them mentions a contractor named Bill. The name hits me sideways. My mother's no-rush note about flashing had penciled Ask Bill. I schedule walkthroughs and circle roof on the pad with a softness I reserve for the few things I wish I'd done sooner. The basement takes a key and a breath. The hasp is bent. I remove it and fit a new one from a drawer where Evelyn kept every spare part that might someday be the right answer. The steps give in to cool air and a clean, old paper odor. Shelves hold jars of screws sorted by head type, paint cans with dates, ledger books labeled by year. Near the furnace, scuffs arc across concrete like someone dragged weight once and never told it. A plywood panel shows bright nail heads out of register with the finish. Behind it, ducting masks a small wall safe, half swallowed by shadow. I photograph what I see, the panel, the duct, the edges where dust breaks like a tide line, the safe's paint sunned to a different gray. I write in the notebook, safe located, do not open yet, stabilize legal first. Then I lock the basement and pocket the key because patience isn't natural to me, it has to be engineered. Back upstairs, I scan receipts for the day into folders that echo my mother's tidy cosmology. Smear, public, smear, ops, forensics, bank, forensics, media, basement, photos. I print an index page and date stamp it the way she taught me, proof before comfort. June answers on the second ring. Her voice is small, carrying a room I cannot enter. We talk about etudes and a math quiz, then I ask, as gently as I know how, whether anyone has promised Miles help with tuition. Silence holds its breath. He said a mentor knows scholarship people, she says, and lets the sentence float like a raft she doesn't trust. I keep the line open with ordinary things. Did the lunchbox make it home? How's the A string? And tell her I love her. I hang up with my hands clean of interrogation and dirty with worry. Vendor choreography keeps the mind from chewing itself. I set a whiteboard on the hutch. Experts, counsel filings, realtor visits, issuer follow-ups, PD report placeholders. I call the card company, escalate the 2:17 a.m. authorization, write down the supervisor's ID, and request written confirmation plus a fraud case number. I set Google alerts on my name in 3 variants. I email counsel a draft takedown plan for any portals that mirror the evidence bundle. Even a rumor deserves a docket number on its way out. Near midnight, glass explodes the living room into bright cold. A brick skids to rest against the rug. Paper leashes it. I pull gloves from a drawer, photograph the scene wide, then close. Shards, trajectory, the brick's pitted face, the laser-printed flyer showing my casino still, and a QR code fat with confidence. Outside, tires fade. The street returns to empty. I bag the brick and flyer in clean poly, label each evidence physical 01/QR with time and location, and call Burlington PD. The officer takes the report and gives me an incident number that I write twice so my hand knows we are not improvising. On guest Wi-Fi and a cheap burner, I scan the code. It resolves to a smear portal SEO'd to my name, complete with mirrored packages, a countdown widget, and a form inviting anonymous submissions. I rip screenshots, headers, tracer routes, Woo Shuaz records, DNS paths. I zip the set, hash it, and send the hash to counsel in a separate email. The portal is slick in the way expensive contempt is slick. I feel anger move through me like heat across a skillet and then leave no mark. I write in the notebook, trust the record you build, not the storm they build. I text Mara a neutral summary, window incident reported, insurance claim, will be filed locally, please do not share the QR site with June, and put the phone face down. The house creaks like timber thinking. I clean the last bright edges of glass and lay the brick, the flyer, the basement photos, and the two 17 a.m. log printouts into a tidy grid under the dining lamp. Order, even temporary, lets breath return to its job. Tomorrow I'll stand in front of the safe with new eyes and the right questions. Tonight I let restraint win one more round and close the basement key into my fist. If you're still watching and this resonates, drop number 1 in the comments so I know you're here. Keep going with me. I go down in the morning with gloves in my pocket and a light strapped to my head, the way I've entered burned buildings to read the language of heat on joists. The cellar air smells of paper, soap, and the iron in old nails. I set on my phone to record on continuous, announce the date and time for the benefit of anyone who will need to trust this later, and photograph the panel again. Bright nailheads, dust-tied lines, the shallow arc of scuffs near the furnace. Sticky notes become makeshift placards, B1 through B4, so I can refer back without pointing into fog. The safe sits behind a rectangle of plywood that loses its argument with a pry bar faster than it should. Paint on the safe body is a tired gray rubbed smooth near the dial where a more stubborn hand used to work. Faint pencil numerals live along the frame, Evelyn's handwriting in miniature, the same tight loops she used on grocery lists. I try a sequence that folds my birth year into hers, sweeping the dial the way I've taught June to steer, slow, then steadier. The third combination clicks like a small door in the wall of an old house. My breath steels itself as I pull the heavy face open. Inside is order. An envelope of cash sits beneath a note that says, in her tidy script, not for comfort, for proof. I count $33,000, the bills banded and dated. A mini voice recorder rests on a foam cradle, labeled in ballpoint. Hail, calls with dates spanning 3 years. A craft folder marked Miles. Fellowship holds printed transfer receipts, email printouts full of cheerful pitch language about civic data, financial literacy pilots, mentorship, and a tuition conduit that pretends to be community. At the back, Evelyn's memo runs to 2 pages, bullet points, date she contacted a local attorney for advice, and 3 hard notes, masking IPs, 2-factor authentication change prompts, social narrative first. I do not move anything before I photograph everything in place. The phone camera puts a patient eye on hingeware, spalled paint, the grain of the folder, each corner and edge. Then the evidence log starts breathing next to my hand. SF01 through a number I will not let get away from me. The recorder becomes 2 encrypted clones on micro SD cards, while the original slides into a static bag I seal, sign, and put aside. I lift a corner of the cash envelope and log the totals, then return it to its bed. Nothing leaves the table without a name. The first clip I sample is my mother's voice. Calm, older, not a tremor in it. She says the man has introduced himself as Victor Hale from a fellowship that helps bright young analysts find purpose. He asks whether Miles can share my email and schedule for context, a phrase that sounds like a handshake and feels like a glove. Evelyn thanks him, asks, plain as a hammer, why he needs the father's email for a scholarship. His tone changes in a small way only librarians would notice. She ends the call. In a later recording, he tells someone, maybe the same number, maybe not, we can position Graham as a transparency advocate if he cooperates. The word that lands is position, like moving a chess piece you do not own. In a third clip, a different voice sketches a cadence for public allegations, how they must outrun filings to own the first version. Afterward, my mother whispers to no one but the recorder, document then warn Graham. My laptop pings with an email from the Boston expert. Preliminary indicators, he says, point to manufactured stills. specular highlights that don't reconcile with the overhead fixture grid, lens distortion inconsistent with cameras advertised in the casino's own marketing, frame edges too clean for a capture-off in-house CCTV. He can draft an affidavit, but he wants original EXIF sources. He proposes a live consult. I reply with availability and a list of file hashes I've already taken, then print the email and staple it into a section labeled Forensics Media. The folder on Miles cuts finer than I'm prepared for. Transfers into an account tied to tuition show up with memo lines that look like kindness and behave like leverage. Some subjects are childish with emoji, which makes me ache more than rage would. A badge image reads, Mentor in a friendly font under a banner named Hail Fellowship. The throwaway emails that shepherd him along follow a pattern. Numbers tucked at the end, familiar enough to make the handle throwaway underscore M23 pinch at my ribs. I write the observation in the margin and draw a line under it. Not a conclusion, not yet. The phone rings with no caller ID, which could be a doctor or a threat. The voice I get is smooth and unhurried, a salesman for an exit I cannot buy. He says not to rummage in the basement, that I should sign to sell Queen Anne this week, that I could keep some dignity, and my son could keep his future. I ask a level question the way I would ask a site foreman for a permit. Victor Hale? The line hard clicks dead. I sit a full count before I move, then log the time, the phrasing I can quote verbatim, and the timbre. Male, mid-40s to 50s, Pacific Northwest accent softening the consonants. I screenshot the carrier log and email counsel to begin a preservation subpoena to the telco. Panic wants to run laps. I give it a chair and a list instead. The safe closes. The panel goes back on with new nails whose brightness will testify to today if anyone asks. One recorder clone goes into a bank safe deposit box before lunch. The other clone stays in a locked pouch under the spare tire. The original lives in a fireproof bag in the hall closet because proximity still matters to me when trust is low. I assemble a sealed packet for counsel, recorder excerpt, Evelyn's memo, the smear portal's woe choice and DNS ladder, the deepfake indicators, and mark it urgent, coercion tied to financial interference. A draft affidavit grows beside it, all photos captioned, chain of custody details precise enough to read like a metronome. For a moment, I let the father take the chair from the litigant. Miles as agent versus instrument, will versus gravity. I see us at the workbench years ago, his small fingers turning a ratchet. While I said torque specs are just a way of telling the truth about how tight something should be, I write him a letter I do not send. Truth won't save you from consequence, I tell him on paper, but it will keep you from becoming someone borrowed. Evening cools the windows into mirrors. The envelopes are sealed. A courier is scheduled to meet counsel at their office door. I stand at the basement threshold with my palm on the new hasp and say the two roads out loud because hearing them makes them less grand and more simple. Sign and stay silent, or expose and fight. I open my laptop and write to the Vermont Attorney General's office, copying counsel, requesting a meeting, and offering cooperation. The subject line is a clean sentence: coercion attempt documented, readiness to cooperate. When I sit back, the house settles in a timber creak that sounds like a scent. On the table, Evelyn's memo waits like a hand on my shoulder. Document first, then warn. Consider me warned, now I build. I begin the day by reading my own handwriting as if it belonged to a steadier man. The affidavit is stacked where the dining lamp makes a clean circle. Photos of the safe, item IDs in the margins, chain of custody notations neat enough to stand in court without me. I sign and date beneath a sentence Evelyn would have liked for its economy. Materials discovered, logged, cloned, preserved. I speak a short checklist aloud to make my will keep pace with my breath. A G meeting, telco preservation, bank subpoenas, motion to vacate, security posture. The recorder's original goes back into the fireproof bag. One clone remains in the bank box. The other waits sealed, labeled, and impatient. The Vermont Attorney General's office lives in an old stone that remembers winters by the smell of wet wool. Intake happens in a narrow room where the state seal stares down at the table like a practical ancestor. I give my statement the way I would give a damage estimate: dates first, then locations, then what the eye can prove. A deputy notes with a pencil that never seems to dull. A senior assistant attorney general from White Collar joins, and a federal contact enters by secure video. I slide the sealed packet across, the recorder excerpt, the hail name, the smear portals, WO Chewies, and DNS ladder, deepfake signals from Boston, the 2:17 a.m. spine that stitches log to log, the Burlington PD incident number for the brick. The AAG outlines lanes I can recognize even without the signs, preservation letters to telcos and platforms, bank holds for login and device metadata, a conflict check, and the possibility of a grand jury if my pattern maps to others. I authorize contact with my Seattle counsel so filings speak in chorus. By noon, the letters begin leaving electronic fingerprints. Telcos receive requests for call detail records and cell site data tied to the no-caller ID threat. Platforms are asked to freeze account metadata around those minutes that repeat like a bad drum fill. I collect incident numbers, staff names, timestamps, and print confirmations for a binder I title Preservation, Master in a Hand, that keeps me from feeling superstitious. A deputy reminds me that clockwork beats panic every time. I believe her because she wears the same kind of shoes Evelyn did when the weather didn't cooperate. Seattle counsel calls from a stairwell that turns his words into tin. He is drafting a motion to vacate or modify temporary orders based on new evidence, deepfake indicators, posting date offsets, the documented smear and coercion track now under law enforcement review, and ongoing forensics. We cue attachments: my affidavit, the expert's prelim email, the AG intake letter, the Burlington PD report, the chain of custody index. He will seek short notice relief, I agree, before he finishes the sentence. He asks me to continue logging without editorial, to keep my tone clinical on the page even if my pulse fails the test. Security is a rope you pull hand over hand. The AG's office recommends a baseline: vary travel, avoid patterns, restrict geotags, use a burner number for unknown contacts. Back at the house, I change the locks and slide security film over the repaired bay. The fireproof bag migrates to a bolted lockbox hidden in a joist cavity I cut myself. I keep the invoice because insurance and memory sometimes require the same proof. I write the times and the names in the same book as the 2:17 a.m. series, so later no one confuses scale with story. Investigators ask me not to confront Miles. They want a non-custodial interview when the paper is ready, a conversation measured by consent instead of force. I accept the plan and write a sentence I will not send. I believe you can tell the truth. The pen leaves a groove deep enough to cast a shadow. I close the notebook to keep from reading it again. At the community bank, I open a second safe deposit box because redundancy is the one luxury I can justify. I log box numbers and key IDs, split the evidence clones, and file printed hash manifests in a separate envelope so the chain can prove its own shape. I ask the manager to preserve lobby CCTV for the hour that bears my name. He nods and prints me a receipt for what the camera will remember. On the sidewalk, I feel watched. In the ordinary way, people watch a man carry a folder as if he might drop it. While the experts talk, counsel files notices at the portals that host the smear, stacking DMCA and tortious interference, and a draft restraining order against the operator who would love to remain a rumor himself. The AG flags a consumer protection angle: unfair and deceptive acts dressed as public service. I adopt media silence like a uniform. If pressed, I will say one line: fabricated materials are under active law enforcement review. It is not a sentence designed to satisfy anyone. That is why it works. Night takes its seat across from me, and I let the work give me a map. On the hutch, a timeline board grows bones. I pinned 2:17 a.m. across the bank's authorization, the company IT alert, the smart lock's ghost check, the gaming platform's ping. The pins align like rivets across a hull, the kind of structure you trust because you can see and touch every fastener. Beside the board, I prop a photo of Miles at 9 with a ratchet in his hand. The kid in the picture looks like he believes torque specs are a kind of truth. I copy Evelyn's line beneath it. Document first, then warn. The last act is small and decisive. I record a video affidavit on my phone stating the choice to cooperate fully with state and federal authorities, authorizing the use of my materials, acknowledging risk without ornament. I send a final email with a one-word subject that reads like a lever: proceed. To the AAG, Seattle Council, the Boston expert, and the accountant. The house quiets into the kind of sound a hasp makes when it accepts its job. I set the phone face down, breathe until the count steadies, and tell the room the thing that makes it true. I have chosen the work no one can take from me. Tomorrow will belong to consequences. Tonight belongs to the document. The morning begins with a call I do not return, only answer. The AAG's voice is clipped and professional. Warrants are signed, teams are moving. I stand at Evelyn's sink and watch the maple leaves shake as if the wind could read a docket. My instruction is simple: stay off-site, keep the phone clear, wait for scheduled check-ins. I can do that. Waiting is a form of work when the work is evidence. By mid-morning, an inventory list arrives in a secure link, itemized in the language I trust. From the Airbnb near the university, a laptop, an external SSD, 2 thumb drives labeled Hail Fellowship, a printed PDF titled Smear Cadence, a spiral notebook with bullet points that read like a playbook, and a cheap VoIP handset with call history still warm. No adjectives, just nouns that carry their own charge. I take notes on paper because screens do not slow my pulse enough. Item IDs, hashes, times. The columns shape the air back into something like oxygen. In the task room that afternoon, I stand in the doorway and listen while the investigator walks me through what I am allowed to hear. Scripts for scraping wallet metadata, templates for anonymous complaint forms, a checklist for seeding commentary to push a trend over the ridge, a deepfake workflow guide saved like a recipe card. A spreadsheet maps tuition link transfers routed through shells with names that aspire to virtue. In a margin, someone has written KPIS as if a child had labeled the sky. I write only the parts I am permitted: incident numbers, hash strings, location of seizure, the existence of the files. Relief and grief share a boundary. I feel both and sign the visitor log with a hand that refuses to shake. Miles sits for a non-custodial interview in a neutral office. I am not present. I learn the shape of the conversation later, summarized without flourish. He describes civic tech and financial literacy pilots, a mentorship offered by Victor Hale, an invitation to help teach transparency. He acknowledges operating accounts on instruction, including the throwaway that stamped my name onto a trending thread. He denies knowledge of coercion. Investigators schedule a follow-up and say counsel will be notified if the status changes. I write the phrases down exactly as delivered and let rage pass through me like weather. Sequence first, then repair. Seattle counsel moves faster than rumor. On short notice, he lays out the AG's intake letter, the Burlington PD report, the expert's deepfake indicators, and excerpts from the warrant returns. In a remote status hearing, the judge suspends the earlier temporary orders that depended on contested exhibits. The Queen Anne sale is frozen. My parenting time expands while the court sets a full hearing on a near docket. A non-dissemination order issues directing both parties to stop sharing unverified allegations and naming platforms expected to comply with preservation and takedown. The ruling arrives as a PDF. I read it twice, print it, and sign the receipt page for my binder as if the ink itself could steady me. The internet does not apologize, but it sometimes obeys. Mirror portals begin to fall to take down notices. Search results show under review banners in place of indictment by headline. Counsel circulates a single sentence for clients who ask, "Fabricated materials are under active law enforcement review. We appreciate your patience. I decline interviews and log each request with the same care I gave to nails in a panel because even silence needs a ledger." Mara reaches out through counsel. The message is careful, as if walking on loose gravel. She will cooperate. The financial contact who pressed for a quick sale was, she now discloses, a family connection. She believed she was getting estate planning advice. She forwards email threads, calendar invites, the soft drip of weeks into momentum. Shame and defensiveness share sentences like roommates. I respond with facts and requests for originals, nothing else. The document will carry what I cannot. The twist lands in a single line from the investigator. The contact is Mara's half-brother operating under a consultant alias in the business of digital estate protection. His correspondence overlaps Hale's. He facilitated introductions to scholarship gatekeepers. Betrayal acquires a face I have seen at holidays. I write the name in my notebook, circle it once, and underline inside vector. There is relief in having a noun to call the hole in the fence. Protective measures expand their quiet perimeter. The non-dissemination order reduces the immediate spread. Burlington patrol cars add drive-bys after the brick report. I file the glass claim with my insurer and attach the incident number, then install a doorbell camera and log its retention settings like a man who intends to be believed later. OPSEC is dull by design. Dull is safe. In the evening, I send a single message to my son. "I'm listening when you are ready to tell the truth." I will not discuss details outside counsel hours later. His reply arrives as if it had to climb a hill. "I'm scared." I copy the text into my record and do not respond. It takes more discipline than any page of chain of custody I have ever initialed. Keeping the case safe from my need to comfort is a kind of love he will not recognize yet. Night brings the court's PDF glow to my small office like a window in place of a wall. I pin new printouts to the timeline board, raids to interview to suspension to the half-brother link. The 2:17 a.m. spine still threads through the middle, a set of rivets holding the hull. I add a fourth column titled Remedies and write 3 headers: legal, motion to vacate, sanctions, clawback, potential civil claims for defamation and interference, financial, reserve funds for experts, pursue recovery of tuition flows, file notices to preserve insurance rights, reputation, structured client contact, no interviews, controlled statement, defer to law enforcement updates. The house is quiet in the way only an old house can earn. I sharpen a pencil and draw 3 arrows from today to tomorrow. Then I write one sentence above all the others exactly as I want to live it. Truth is moving faster than the smear now. Keep it that way. I put the pencil down, straighten the binder tabs until they align, and breathe until the count reaches something that feels like a plan. Outside, the maple throws a shadow across the shade like handwriting. Inside, I let consequence settle where it belongs, in order, in ink, in line. Morning begins with the board. I redraw the mess of arrows into 3 clean lanes and give them dates: legal, financial, reputation. The court suspension order goes at the top like oxygen. Without it, none of this breathes. I print an index page the way Evelyn did, initials each task box, and set a timer for 90-minute sprints so the day can't wander. Small, true things done daily. It becomes a sentence I can stand inside. Legal first. Seattle Council files the motion to vacate and modify, a stack that carries the deepfake prelim, the AG intake letter, excerpts from the warrant returns, and my chain of custody index. Minutes later, he texts that the court signed a limited injunction against the portal operator while we chase the name behind the mirror. Platforms respond that preservation and takedown are in effect. Each acknowledgement gets printed and slid into preservation master. Subpoenas for bank raw CSV, login and device logs, Platform two-factor authentication change history, and telco call records are confirmed served. I add incident numbers in blue ink to make them stand out from the black that came before. Counsel drafts a sanctions memo aimed at parties who filed fabricated exhibits and leaves placeholders for the civil claims. Defamation per se, tortious interference, intentional infliction of emotional distress. I breathe easier not because any of it is over, but because the verbs now point in the right direction. Financial next. The forensic accountant and I build a damages workbook. Lost income plotted by week, client churn logged by contract value, future impairment modeled in ranges. We load calendar blocks, cancellation emails, and rate cards into cells that make pain legible. I initiate clawback notices to the community scholarship conduit and 2 shells. Our letters request escrow holds on funds linked to tuition transfers and warn of litigation if dissipation continues. Insurance is simpler. The broken window claim closes with a modest check, and I log security upgrades, the doorbell camera, the film, the new locks, for a possible premium credit later. On the real estate front, the Queen Anne sale remains frozen by order. I note a voluntary downsize plan to Tacoma after the dust settles, not as surrender, but as a choice about how we want to live. Control is a tool. I intend to use it. Reputation is a third lane that moves best when it moves quietly. Counsel approves a short client town hall on video, recorded and archived. I keep to 30 minutes. My statement is 1 paragraph. Certain online claims are under active law enforcement review. Fabricated materials were submitted in related proceedings. I can't discuss details, but I can promise continuity of service and full cooperation with authorities. Q&A stays procedural. I refuse the gravity of speculation. We add a neutral banner to the website and email footer. Certain online claims are under law enforcement review, and log every media request with a timestamp and the same no-interview reply. Reputation work is less about winning the room than refusing to leave it. The Boston expert delivers his affidavit draft in the afternoon. GAN artifacts, lighting mismatch, compression lineage, all set out with citations and exhibits that a judge can read without a translator. I suggest an appendix with plain language explanations so the bench can see the trick without needing the code. We schedule mock testimony to limber the spine of his Rule 702 showing. Meanwhile, I notarize consents for banks and issuers to pull my device logs. Duplicative, yes, but duplication is a form of safety. A password audit follows. New phrases, printed recovery keys, two-factor authentication written down with dates and sealed in an envelope I sign. Ritual trims dread to size. We keep the human lane narrow and bounded. Telehealth with Mara for co-parenting rules, no case facts. Drop-offs, school communications, what June needs to keep music separate from the noise. A separate session with a clinician for father and son follows later in the week. The frame is restorative justice in small words: truth, impact, amends. Legal counsel defines the edges. I write 3 lines in my journal after each session, feelings logged without spilling into the record. Repair is not catharsis, it is a plan. OPSEC refresh is dull by design. I vary routes to the bank and the store, scrub metadata from every PDF and image, run a device audit, and write passwords down on paper like it's 1987. The doorbell camera and exterior lights feed a retention schedule. Burlington PD has access if they need it. Nightly close becomes a checklist. Windows, locks, offsite backup, printed index signed. The pages stack. The stack becomes a rhythm. The rhythm becomes a place to stand. Small proofs begin to answer back. 2 longtime clients reaffirm their contracts after the town hall. New purchase orders arrive with terse notes of confidence. I write handwritten thank yous because handwriting is proof of presence. A new referral lands with a subject line that says, "We saw how you handled it." I file it under reputation. Recovery, not because it pays a bill today, but because it pays a different debt tomorrow. Investigators propose a non-custodial follow-up with Miles. Ways his cooperation can include data recovery, context memos, and names of coordinators. I do not text strategy. I send a single bounded message through counsel. There is a legal path for repair. Speak truthfully with your attorney present. Grief sits beside gratitude at the table and both keep quiet. The boy who once held a ratchet is now a man holding a key to a room he didn't mean to enter. Keys work both ways. Paper protects the rest. I compile a defamation dossier, screenshots with timestamps, take down receipts, client notes expressing concern, and the costs of answering them. Demand letters are drafted to the portal operator and to the consultant alias that belongs to Mara's half-brother. We preserve claims, propose evidence escrow, and set deadlines that do not blink. The letters do not threaten, they promise. By the end of the second week, the board shows check marks like stars over a dark field. The hearing date for the motion to vacate sits circled in red. The expert's affidavit is finalized. Mock testimony is on the calendar. Town hall replay archived and transcribed. Therapy follow-ups scheduled. Subpoenas confirmed. Clawback notices out. Incident numbers logged in their proper binders. I switch off the lamp and let the quiet be a verdict I can accept for tonight. Tomorrow will bring outcomes and the first stretch of solid ground I've felt in months. For now, I write one ledger line under everything. Small, true things done daily. Then I sign my name, not because it changes the facts, but because it reminds me who is responsible for carrying them forward. I fly back to Burlington one more time to close the loop that let me survive this. The basement is cooler than the forecast. The safe opens with the same small courtesy as before. I place a letter to Miles inside, 3 pages about truth, consequence, amends, and a copy of the vacatur order and the cover pages of the renewed client agreements. I lock the door, leave the key with the attorney who will shepherd the sale, and stand for a minute in the smell of soap and old paper. Thank you, I say, because gratitude is also evidence. The house does not answer, which feels correct. The symbols shrink back into tools. The dash cam returns to its ordinary job, teaching June Lane changes in the physics of a curb. I file the last takedown receipt, sign the final index for preservation, master, and close the binder with a flat hand. Envelopes go out with handwriting that tries not to wobble. Thank you to the AAG team, to the Boston expert, to the Burlington officer who cataloged a brick on a rain-creased night. The mail carrier tips his cap. Small ceremony, earned. On a Tuesday in Tacoma, I take a client video call from a spare office painted the color of quiet. The 3-lane board is gone, replaced by a single sheet titled Maintenance. Outside the door, June's cello scales move up and down like a spirit-level finding center. On the calendar hangs a square that reads Miles, Service Shift, the kind of entry I have learned to value because it marks time spent on purpose. The client asks a question about depreciation curves, and I answer it with the calm of a man who has rebuilt his own. When the call ends, I let the silence settle, and I say the sentence that belongs here, now, and not to headlines. We didn't win a story. We repaired a record. Then I open the next file because the work continues, smaller and truer, the way good structures do when you stop pretending they're monuments and let them be houses. The bungalow learns my rhythms faster than I learn its sounds. In the mornings, I brew coffee, open the back door to let marine air file the edges off sleep, and stand in a rectangle of light while the fairy horns sketch a timetable I never see but trust. Above the desk, I've taped a single sheet where the 3-lane board once hung. It is titled Maintenance. Beneath it, a clip holds a fresh index page I signed the night before. This is the shape of the lesson. We didn't win a story, we repaired a record. Everything that follows lives under that sentence. I start with locks, backups, and the day's short list. The ritual is small on purpose. I print the calendar square for June's rehearsal and the note about Miles's service shift and slide both into a plastic sleeve. Evidence over outrage, steady over spectacular, prevention over reaction. The ethic Evelyn lived in paper scaled to digital life. The basement, I know now, is not a room. It's a posture. When I straighten the binder on the shelf, I hear her pencil on a tab, her voice refusing panic the dignity of a reply. Proof before comfort, then keep the proof. Technology sits at the table like a guest who will eat anything you feed it, including you. I don't mistake it for an enemy or a friend. I keep redundancies. A human list of experts I can call without searching, counsel, forensics, accounting, alongside paper twins of the most important files. Passwords and two-factor authentication keys live on paper in sealed envelopes, dated and initialed. Device audits run monthly. Geotags stay off by default. Anomalies get timestamps and incident numbers even if they turn out to be a router sneezing. None of this is glamorous. All of it is strength. Family repair runs on different clocks. I do not confuse love with speed. The restorative arc the clinician sketched, truth, impact, amends, sounds simple in a sentence and like work in a life. We keep boundaries, no strategy by text, no case facts in the kitchen, appointments kept as a form of apology that can be witnessed. A father can want to soothe and still choose not to for the sake of the larger cure. When Miles sends a logistics note, I answer with one line and a period. Progress is measured in kept commitments, not promises delivered in the currency of panic. Work behaves when I refuse to perform for strangers. The invitations to talk about what happened go to archive with a log entry and a timestamp. I tell my clients the one paragraph I am allowed to tell and then deliver reports that read like reports. Pain becomes practice when you put it to work for others. The white paper on document integrity, the process upgrades, the quiet insistence that our shop will measure twice before anyone hammers a narrative into a beam it was never meant to carry. Green shoots became branches the day I understood that competence is its own public statement. Money and home share a spine. I downsize by choice, not because a court says so. The Tacoma bungalow puts me closer to June's school and farther from the noise of a view that turned into a scoreboard. Construction by subtraction looks plain on a ledger and feels like relief in the body. Control is not victory, it is responsibility exercised. I sell what I no longer need, keep what I can maintain, and name the rest noise without apology. When I think about Evelyn now, I don't picture the safe first. I see her standing at the kitchen table flattening a receipt with her palm, drawing a small line under the total as if signing a truce with the day. The basement, hers literal, mine now literal and figurative, is where proof lives. Receipts boxes, deposit slips, recorded dates, and a steady hand. Everyone has a basement whether they admit it or not, a place where neglected things rot or documented things keep. Document first, then warn, maintain. The smear machine has largely forgotten me. Algorithms are opportunists. They don't hold grudges, only attention. I choose deliberate non-participation anyway. No victory laps, no dunking, no thread where I pretend irony is justice. The town hall recording sits in an archive with a checksum. When someone asks what to do if it happens to them, I send process notes, not gossip. Silence is often strategy, not surrender. I mail the last of the handwritten thank yous in a stack that looks like a short fence. The preservation, master binder, goes to the shelf in case some future hour needs its spine. A slimmer binder opens. Operations, next quarter. I list 3 projects that require only skill and time. The room feels bigger when a plan takes the space panic used to rent. For the men my age who find themselves learning my lesson the hard way, I keep a distilled list where I can see it. 1. Build your expert bench before you need it. Law, digital forensics, accounting, therapy. 2. Make paper twins of your digital life. Hashes, prints, signed indexes, off-site copies. 3. Set OPSEC habits you can keep. Password audits, two-factor authentication keys on paper, geotag discipline, varied routines. 4. Pre-write a 1-paragraph factual statement. Use it instead of improvisation. 5. Teach your kids how manipulation looks when it wears mentorship's clothes. 6. Remember that silence can be strategy, not shame. In the afternoon, I drive with June through a light rain and let the dash cam do its ordinary job. We talk about lane changes and how to look where you want the car to go instead of where you fear it will drift. I tell her that attention is a steering wheel. She laughs because metaphors embarrass teenagers and because she knows I'm right. Back home, we log the practice hour and write down the next one. Schedules are a form of kindness when the world has been busy, proving it can be anything else. Evening brings the cello through the door like a liturgy for hands. I mark the calendar square for Miles' service shift complete and slide it into the sleeve behind today's index page. The bungalow's quiet is not empty, it's earned. I look at the single sheet on the wall and rest my palm against it, feeling paper accept weight and give nothing back but steadiness. I think of the fairy horns and the small system they belong to, unseen and agucked. I turn off the lamp and leave the room in order. A life repaired does not glitter, it holds. That is enough. Proof before comfort. Then keep the proof. Tomorrow's work order is already clipped under maintenance. I lock the door, listen once for the latch, and let the house be what a house should be. Less a monument than a structure you maintain, smaller and truer than anyone's story about it. Some endings don't thunder, they hold. When truth finally catches up to rumor, it rarely arrives with applause. Only a steadier floor and the quiet permission to move forward. What endures is simple and stubborn. Proof before performance, boundaries that protect love, and the discipline to maintain what matters after the crisis fades. Justice at its best is repair. Dignity, the habit of small, true acts repeated. Home is not a prize but a practice, kept by lists, honesty, and the choice to be accountable without becoming hard. The future is lighter when records are clean and hearts stay open. Thank you for being here. If this story resonated or challenged you, share a thought below. Your perspective may steady someone else tonight. Like and subscribe if you value stories that prize evidence over noise, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter of resilience, accountability, and hope. Tell us what part stayed with you, what you'd have done differently, or what lesson you're taking into tomorrow. If it helped, share this with someone who needs a steadier floor. We read every comment. Be kind, be curious, take care,